Hello, everyone. You're all very welcome. My name is Paul Moore. I'm the marketing manager for Validate Me. I am filling in for Tim Horgan, our head of customer support, who unfortunately is sick and not able to make it today. He's okay, but we didn't want to put him in the spotlight if he was feeling under the weather. I'd like to introduce the other members of our team on the call. We have Kieran Corkery, our co-founder and CPO, and Michelle Maguire, our head of risk and compliance. On our agenda today, I will give you a short intro into Validate Me. We will then discuss how onboarding is currently done versus how it could be done, followed by a short summary before answering any questions. As we go through the webinar, I would encourage you to submit any questions you might have, and we can address them then at the end. We will also have a poll running throughout the webinar, so please do submit your answers as we go, and we can discuss it as a group. The question in the poll today is, what is the biggest issue when it comes to onboarding for your firm? Is it time, cost, knowledge, technology solutions available? We will display this again during the Q&A, so you can submit your answer then as well. If you would like some more information after the webinar, we'll provide contact details for your team, as we'd be more than happy to answer any additional questions you might have. As a thank you for attending, we'll also be giving access to our most recent white paper. So who is Validate Me? Validate Me is a multi-award winning digital identity and client onboarding due diligence platform. We were established in 2019 and we are based in Cork City. Some of our clients are on screen now on the intro slide, along with some of the awards we have received, with the company most recently winning gold at the National Startup Awards last year. So thank you to everyone for your attention so far, and I'll now hand you over to our co-founder and CPO, Kieran.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everyone, for attending. As Paul said, my name is Kieran Corkery. I'm the Chief Product Officer here in Validate Me and also one of the co-founders. So we've been on the Validate Me journey since 2019, and as Paul said, Validate Me is a reusable digital identity, customer onboarding and due diligence platform. As a business, we've been product focused on Validate Me since 2021, and before co-founding Validate Me, I spent almost a decade in Accenture in Dublin. So I'm an IT guy, systems delivery, but please don't hold that against me. So I might pass over to Michelle now, my colleague.
Thanks, Kieran. As mentioned, my name is Michelle Maguire. I'm the head of risk and compliance for Validate Me. I joined the company in November of last year. But prior to joining Validate Me, I spent a significant length of time, I don't want to age myself, in various financial services industries, in both AML, risk and compliance roles. And then about 5 years ago, I took a chance on fintech, realized the power of it, and joined a fintech before joining Validate Me last year. A large part of my role is to help Kieran and his team navigate the changes in regulatory requirements and make sure that the software itself meets the needs of accountancy practices like those of you on the call today, or the broader financial services industry.
Thanks, Michelle. So we might jump straight into it, Michelle, and talk about, I suppose, the topic which is onboarding, and how we might split that up is, I guess, talk a little bit first about how it's currently done, or at least what we're witnessing within the market across sectors, be it accounting, which obviously is particularly relevant for this group, as well as legal firms, real estate, and then obviously into your traditional kind of financial services, banking, funds, etc. So we'll talk about the kind of industry as a whole in terms of onboarding, but obviously making it specific to the accounting sector as well. So I guess onboarding, to maybe state an obvious fact, it isn't necessarily a straightforward process. I think often it's overlabeled as something that can always be simple and seamless, when often that there are cases where we need to collate additional documents, maybe as part of enhanced due diligence, or maybe we just need to drill down into some factors as part of the onboarding journey. But what we are hearing, I think, and observing, is that it is a particular pain point, and that it I think the overwhelming sentiment in the market is that it can and should be done better. So when we got into this space back in 2019, which was pre-COVID, it was an issue then. It's fair to say it's still an issue now, and arguably it's even more of an issue now because we all got that taste of maybe what onboarding could be like over the COVID pandemic. Things seemed to get a lot quicker. Friction points were removed, and I think the industry is kind of yearning for a bit more of that. Michelle, would you concur?
Yeah, I mean, COVID probably was one of the biggest disruptors of our time, and in a good way. It forced businesses to think differently and to adapt to an extreme circumstance. So there has been benefits. There's learnings, as you say. You know, and if we think back to, you know, gathering AML, it's a very repetitive process. It's time consuming. It's very costly. It's, you know, frustrating for the customer and the company alike. You know, you want to onboard your customer, you want to get going, you want to establish your business relationship. So there are a lot of barriers to beginning that relationship. And we're in a world that is increasingly complex, increasingly globalized, and documents need to be sourced from many locations and many different people, and trying to kind of, you know, make that seamless, it can be very, very difficult for companies.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think even if we look at some of the trends in terms of onboarding, you know, so if you take even just an industry like banking, but it's not actually uncommon amongst accounting firms, in particular, I guess here in Ireland and also in the UK. You know, it takes on average approximately a month to fully onboard a customer, and that trend is actually increasing. So it's not actually getting any quicker, which is kind of a staggering stat. But if we're to focus a little bit, let's say, on this middle point here, which is customer centric, and I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of onboarding is still done kind of point to point over email, and even a lot of the more maybe forward-thinking kind of RegTech providers, like a lot of those solutions are also still point-to-point, which isn't overly customer-centric, and obviously it's hard for accounting firms and for other firms that need to onboard their customers because they have lots to think about. Onboarding is just one part of, I guess, the client life cycle, but I think all too often we're seeing that maybe we're all guilty of maybe not thinking about how many times, you know, a director or a UBO or a secretary has actually already sent documents that year or has uploaded the same information to various different portals. Like if you take our own platform, for example, you know, 1 in every 3 connections made on Validate Me is to a director. So if you extrapolate that, you know, that says that there's a lot of directors and UBOs that are doing repetitive things over and over again, and that's not necessarily benefiting them or the practice at hand. So I think no one is maybe properly focusing on that customer experience and seeing how it could actually, by maybe focusing in on it, how it can actually help to improve the pain point for the practice themselves.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, AML by its nature has been disparate over the years, and you know, information's gathered for different needs. Regulations have changed, standards have changed, and business activities have changed. You know, we're even heading towards an era now where we're expecting a new EU AML authority. So there is more change on the way for companies. And, you know, there has been a tick box exercise approach to AML, KYC. We have to get it done. We need to satisfy the regulator or the competent authority. We need to show that our stats are good, that, you know, 90% of our accounts are AML confirmed. And all those needs and musts don't put the customer at the heart of the process. It's putting the business at the heart of the process. Understandably, you have rules and regulations that you need to adhere to, but equally, if your customer is frustrated, they're not going to engage with the process. So to your point about taking a month to onboard somebody, that could be significantly longer if they're getting, 3-5 emails a week for 5 different accounts. And, you get to the point where you say, why am I being asked for this over and over again? I've given this to you last year. But if your data is not in a place that you can, reach to it very, very quickly, of course, you're going to be sending these repetitious emails out to your customer.
Yeah, and I think even just something as simple as just manual entry, data entry, not only for the business, but then I suppose from the customer's perspective as well. Manually keying in or manually passing over things like PPSN numbers or passport details or date of birth. When and we'll touch on kind of the future of this space or certainly where things are already trending. That's just not a nice customer experience. I think we both agree.
Absolutely. And, I think we both agree that Excel is some of the biggest competitors to most technology businesses right now. So there is the danger of the fat finger, there is the danger of the inversed date of birth, and bad quality data leads to bad results for your customer. So the higher the quality of the data, the less manual entry that you have, the better the output and the better the experience for the customer in the long run.
Yeah, and so we're touching a little bit on this point on the right of the screen, which is kind of poor data storage, the quality, the monitoring, and I guess data storage is something that comes up repeatedly in our conversations, be it with prospects or with existing clients, just around how to get data storage right. And obviously you mentioned Excel, Michelle. Like, I guess email is probably everyone's dirty little secret in many respects, in that it's often overused, and it's difficult for people to move away from email. It's so ingrained and embedded in our society and our businesses. But if I'm just to talk through some stats, right, and I don't want to bore anyone to death, but if you look at some reports around email, some are showing that as little as 0.06% of email traffic is encrypted. And that was a study analysis done on over 81 million emails sent over a 27-year period. Now, obviously, towards the end of that period, we're starting to see an increase in emails being encrypted. But even the most generous report would really only say that on average about 50% of emails these days are actually encrypted, which still really isn't very high at all. And I guess that raises questions around the storage of that information, right? So even that an email that is encrypted in transit, when it's at rest, it's in all likelihood, in the vast majority of every single report, shows that it's stored unencrypted. So it might have been passed to you encrypted, but we then need to decrypt it so that we can actually read what's in it. So practices are coming to us and asking about storing sensitive information, encryption at rest, and it's something that we'll move on to when we talk about, I guess, where the industry is trending. But all of that personal information is viewable, and that can be a real worry, I think, for not only customers but for practices.
Yeah, I mean, obviously KYC data is some of the most sensitive data that exists, and in some cases falls into special categories of data under GDPR. So if you're using a software like Validate Me, you're getting the benefit of biometric checking, which is a special category under GDPR. I talked about data and Excel files, and Kieran, you've mentioned emails, but the more places your data is stored, the more danger that represents for your business, firstly. But also, if you were to comply with a subject access request, or to try and even adhere to a regulatory request, you would have very, very great difficulty in trying to gather all the information that you need to reply with. You might even have to dig through Iron Mountain boxes. So the advice we give to companies is limit the amount of places you're storing this sensitive data. Try and keep it in one, complete, secure area, that in the event that you do have a cyber breach or a cyber attack, that you know where the data is, you can recover it much more quickly than if it was in SharePoint and Excel folders and such like. So your recovery overall is much quicker, but also it's a trust factor. Your customer knows and can trust that your data is stored securely. That they are happy to hand over very, very sensitive details. And we are seeing a more educated consumer than ever before. They are very aware of their rights under GDPR. They're very aware of their privacy rights, and in many cases are exercising them. So it is important that you do have a single point of truth, if you will.
Yeah, no, GDPR is such an interesting topic, obviously for many reasons, but we all hate GDPR when we're the ones that have to comply with it, and then we love it when when we're the ones who I suppose are using it to our advantage in the sense that we are rightly using it to protect our information. I think even from an onboarding perspective, there's as you said, Michelle, I guess the consumer base is more educated about where data is being stored, and the right to access it. So I suppose moving on, you mentioned kind of special category data, and of course within AML and KYC, there's a lot of ID documents that are passed between firms, such as passports, driver's licenses, national ID cards, and even something as sensitive as, I guess, the place that you live, right? A utility bill. I suppose something that we come up against time and time again is that MLROs are saying to us, and data and compliance officers are saying to us that they find it difficult that they're being asked at times to, I guess, verify or get comfortable with ID documents that maybe they've never seen before, right? So that there might be a jurisdiction that they haven't done business with before, and given, I guess, the diversity in Ireland, our diverse population, often you might come across an identity document that you just wouldn't have seen, and I think we're seeing certainly a frustration, but then probably a shift to digital methods, which we'll touch back on. But I think, Michelle, I mean, to ask a question, like, are gone of the days of the wet ink signature, like, how have you seen that transition?
I certainly hope the days of the wedding signature are gone. Like, I really am aging myself now, but going back to the early days of my career, it was paper. Everything was paper. And we perhaps weren't as globalized as what we are now. So to your point, a passport from a country that a passport I may not have been familiar with, I'm looking at it, I'm trying to understand from a poor quality photocopy, is this legitimate? Could I identify this person if they walked into a busy room? And the nature of compliance professionals or AML professionals is that we are suspicious of everything. So we spent more time rejecting documents and asking for color copies, or assurances, a certification to say, yes, this lawyer has seen this, or this accountant has seen this, and they're comfortable that this person is who they say they are. But in a lot of cases, then they were being escalated up to an MLRO or to a senior compliance manager, to, in one sense, protect ourselves, but equally to protect the business. And it was difficult, and it could be fraught with error. And at that time, AML probably wasn't treated or respected as well as it could be. Fast forward to today's world, we're in an era where software removes guesswork. The passport comes into a software, it's biometrically scanned, there's a liveness detection, there's tamper checking that's done on a document. It recognizes name formulations, be it like a Spanish surname that has both the maternal and paternal surnames, or special characters, for example. So all that guesswork is done. And that time spent trying to figure out, is this a legitimate document? And it wouldn't be fair of me not to point out that this is something that is a burden on employees. It is difficult for employees, and in this kind of very tight employment market, employee satisfaction is more important than ever before. So taking those arduous, repetitive tasks away just by using software enhances somebody's day, and you're directing them to the more interesting, more exception-based work.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think, you know, you mentioned, you know, the quality of the images, you know, a number of times, and obviously, you know, the aim is to speed up the onboarding process while not compromising on quality. And I think just having a tool that can recognize whether something's blurry, whether there's enough light, whether it's in color, is you know, is key in terms of trying to speed up that customer experience and that onboarding journey. So I guess kind of tying it all together a little bit, reporting, which is obviously everybody's favorite topic. And I see you smiling there, Michelle. You know, I think it's fair to say that every day we hear that reporting is an issue, right? Be it gap analysis, be it review dates for the next document refresh, be it, you know, what are the risk elements that I've captured? How do I report on that? And if I was to summarize what I think anyway, or what we're hearing are the two biggest kind of pain points in that area, it's been driven by a set of static reports, you know, that aren't they're not configurable, they're not customizable, and they haven't moved with the business. And then obviously the data, the underlying data, that hasn't been stored centrally in a reportable way. So typically kind of unstructured. So, you know, again, a scanned passport where no OCR has been done, or a scanned utility bill where I can't actually check what the date of issue on it is. Do you think that's a specific kind of pain point to Ireland and to the accounting sector, or does it just come in everywhere? Is it fairly pervasive?
It's pervasive. I think compliance people love reports. We love to know where things are at, when they are, the stages they're at, how can we fix the problems, what do we need to worry about. And you know, I spent a large part of my week in, you know, the early days compiling reports and gathering them from various different, you know, sources and things like that. So it was very siloed. It took an awful lot of time. And then it had to be digested into something intelligible to report either to the board of directors or senior management. And the hours lost on that are nearly incalculable in some places. So to be able to deliver and customize your own MIS, you know, get it out whenever you need it, check if all your medium high risk customers, check who is not fully onboarded, missing documents, you know, details of customers maybe onboarded within a quarter, you know, even for your kind of business strategy and your statistics and, you know, dare I say it, revenue, you know, this type of reporting is fundamental to any business. Senior managers, board directors, they don't have time to distill the kind of, you know, 500 passports that you might get in a year. They just want to know how many are high risk, how many are medium, what are we missing, who needs to come up for a review, etc., etc.
Yeah, and I suppose, I guess the practice review or the external audit or even the internal audit is something that comes up quite a bit, and I think we're, again, just with the state of I guess some of the technology that's being used out in the industry, well, across industries, I think that pulling together, I guess, your pack is often an extremely long and stressful kind of process to collate all of that information when you're not using, I guess, a solution or solutions that help you to kind of compile that easily.
Yeah, I mean, obviously audits are lengthy processes and samples and such like. So using the technology, having your information in one location that you can pull your samples within 3 to 5 clicks of a button, you know, or show it to a regulator or a competent authority, being able to grab that into one place in a matter of minutes saves, you know, God knows how many hours in compiling this if you were to do it the traditional way. And the costs associated with that, you know, there is, you know, very good data out there that the cost of compliance or one KYC review is anywhere between $1,500 to $3,500. So being able to do this all very quickly, get it into an audit report, you're drastically reducing your time to compliance and your time to audit in the same vein.
Yeah, no. Agreed. So we might move on. We've talked quite a bit about I guess how it is, and let's talk a little bit now about how it could be done. So I guess we are seeing, thankfully, the emergence of more kind of customer centric solutions for the industry to not only help the customer, but ultimately to pass that benefit onto the businesses whose primary concern is I suppose chargeable billable hours, and KYC and onboarding is a thankless task, right, in lots of ways, so I suppose it's refreshing to see that, you know, the EU Commission have their digital identity program, that they're really championing kind of reusable identity, of which we, to be Validate Me specific, have been kind of banging the drum on for a while now, how it actually makes just more sense for the end customer, but ultimately for the business, in terms of document refreshes, in terms of you know, data storage and all those things that we can maybe come back to. Like, I know when we were invited over to by FinCEN to a group in Washington to talk about digital identity, it was very clear that FinCEN see this as the direction of travel, as do the EU, that reusable digital identities, be it for corporates or for individuals or natural persons, that it just ultimately makes sense. And I suppose we were quite excited to hear that, as well as some of the information that's coming out from FATF, I suppose, around the need to trend towards digital solutions. And one thing that comes up, I suppose, in particular in Ireland, and again, it's across sectors. It's not just accounting, but it does come up in accounting, is, you know, well, the older demographic would find these digital identities difficult to use. They're not kind of you know, that tech native, and I suppose what we are seeing actually is, you know, we have quite a number of directors and UBOs on Validate Me that are 60 plus, that are using the platform very well, and I think we've actually been surprised at the uptake, and I guess, given the amount of education in the industry about, you know, being digital safe, thankfully we're seeing that trend, I guess, maybe isn't, or that data point isn't as strong as maybe one would initially think.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, we're in an era of digital ID, and the EU is really pressing forward with this, that every EU you know, citizen will have their own digital ID, their own wallet to store, you know, their passports or driving license, for example, and that will be used for everything from accessing, you know, governmental services right through to proving your ID to buy that bottle of wine on a Friday night. You know, we're looking toward Asia. Asia are a very digitally advanced economy. These IDs are in use there pervasively for the past number of years, and our near neighbours in the UK have developed a group called TISA, who are really driving forward the use of digital ID. So I think culturally we perhaps need to shift a little bit more. It is happening. You know, there is always concern about, if my information is on the internet, I'm going to get hacked, it's going to be stolen. But ensuring that people understand that their information is secure and encrypted in these wallets is important. And a lot of the good agencies here in Ireland, that, you know, the BPFI and a few others, are really pushing forward this digitally advanced economy. They're really pushing forward the messaging that, you know, be cautious, but don't be terrified of digital first services.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like, kind of building on that, then, you know, to touch back on some of the pain points that people in the industry are coming to us with, I guess enabling a digital first and a customer centric approach, like a reusable digital identity, I guess allows for things like document forensics to become much easier, right? Because you can scan a passport or a driver's license, even from a region that you mightn't be familiar with. You can tell instantly if the holograms are present, if the watermarks are present, if the spacing is right, if the font is right, and ultimately, again, back to, I guess, well, from an onboarding experience for an end customer, and then from business perspective, you know, just the ability that applications that are out there, including our own, but there are others that tell you, well, that image isn't clear enough for me to accept, and it tells you that in real time, you know, which speeds up the experience and ultimately saves money for the underlying practice. We talked a bit about manual data entry and the I guess the ever-present risk of fat fingers. You know, OCR has gotten so advanced in the last few years that it can scrape to an extremely high degree of accuracy, I guess, any of the content that's actually on these documents, and then can pull it into systems such as our own, in a way that makes them reportable, auditable, and clearly visible, I suppose, for the MLRO and or any of the rest of the onboarding team.
Yeah, you know, technology is always advancing, and it can only but improve. You know, we're seeing lots of novel technologies in use. But what I do like about, you know, digital onboarding, to your point, to checks if a document, a passport, has been tampered with in any way, and we will show you all evidence of a document being tampered shortly, and how the system picks it up. But it does speed the process up. It does make it quicker. You know, turnaround times are better, customer satisfaction is better, but arguably as well, you know, your compliance rates are increasing all the time. You know, you're on top of regulatory change, you're on top of compliance need, on, you know, gaps in your programs, you know, gaps in your customer files. It's all there for you within a couple of clicks of a button. And, you know, as a compliance person, as much as the customer is onboarded very, very swiftly, you're also getting real-time data to help you make that decision about onboarding somebody in a much quicker fashion than you could have before.
Yeah, and just to, I suppose, tie it back to maybe storage and GDPR, just before I do go and just do a very quick navigation through Validate Me. I'm conscious this isn't a Validate Me call, and so it'll be fairly brief, but it's just to give an idea of how we have approached trying to alleviate some of these points. But I guess, again, what seems to be coming up repeatedly is, you know, how are solutions in the market, how are present solutions, but also future solutions, how are they being optimized to reduce my data protection and GDPR risk? And as I said, like there's been lots of innovation in this space in the last few years, which I think has been really, really positive. But maybe one of the areas that we felt isn't so positive is the continuation, I suppose, of some kind of point-to-point solutions where the practice at the end of the onboarding process needs to take receipt of everything again, and I guess there's an increase in GDPR risk, there's an increase in monitoring risk, and then ultimately with data subject access requests, it's hard, and there's a scramble to find that data. So I suppose just before I kick into the demo, you know, when evaluating solutions, I think the industry is starting to look, I think, more for solutions that ensure that, you know, not only is data encrypted at rest, within the actual applications themselves, but asking the question, do I always need to take receipt of the data, or can I have always on access to the data to prove my compliance, to prove and document my audit trail and my pack in terms of customer onboarding?
Yeah, and I think another important point there is the Validate Me software in particular records consent. It takes a particular piece of the puzzle away. The end customer is consenting to you accessing their information, and seeing it within our platform. So it is recording consents at all times. Of course, your customer can withdraw consent, but they have signed up to allow you to view the documents for whatever legal period that you are required to hold them. So I think that's a really important fact about Validate Me, and how we handle that particular GDPR related conundrum.
Sure. Okay, I'll quickly just bring up Validate Me to let me just share my screen again. Michelle, you might kindly let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so I'm just going to very, very quickly go through maybe one or two areas that we feel we've addressed. I guess within Validate Me, as I said, it is a reusable digital identity, and so what that does allow is a secure network for you to search for your client, be it a corporate or an individual. And you can see here, I guess if I'm looking to onboard Kieran Corkery, it's very easy for me to find that this is somewhere convenient that Kieran stores his sensitive data. It's very easy for me to just simply request access, so source documents. I can select my pre-configured product or service offering, whatever my required documents are based on my particular rules, and I can ask Kieran for that. And I guess coming back just to this customer client centric approach, the reality of what's going to happen here is that Kieran's going to get a notification on either his phone or via an email, and it's going to be a one-click consent, right? And that's a very different experience from scrambling to find a passport or scrambling to find a utility bill. And we think going forward, and we're seeing it, that directors, UBOs, and natural persons are appreciative, I suppose, of this factor. And I guess Validate Me also, it does have reusable digital identity for corporates as well. So it's any corporate documents, any financial statements, etc., can all be stored there. But just to show then maybe someone who I've connected with before, just to show I guess some of the document forensics, and what I might do is just show a very simple kind of proof of address that's been tampered with. So you can see here that the confidence level on this utility bill is low. If I open it up, we've actually changed all of the pixels here within this document, and we're highlighting that on Validate Me, that this may be something that you need to look at further. You can also see it's a low quality image, which often indicates that maybe it's been tampered with or captured with a device that you wouldn't typically expect someone in the modern day to kind of hold. And I guess something just as simple as a date check. We've disconfigured that 80 to 85 days is within our threshold, but let's say this was a high-risk customer in a particular jurisdiction. If we do business outside of Ireland, that could be configured that we don't, that's a high risk for us actually, and that's a low confidence, and therefore I need to trigger a refresh. The last piece I'll just quickly touch on is just reporting, right? Because it's everyone's favorite topic. So we're very easy to configure report builder. It's all drag and drop. This is just a pre-configured one here where I'm basically just saying I want to know which customers have no review date in terms of their risk assessments. So very quickly that all gets pulled together because the data has been pulled in through Validate Me, the OCR has done scraping, and ultimately you can set up all of your rules depending on your various risk factors as to when a typical client needs to have a risk review done, or when a document refresh needs to occur, and that can all be exportable to Excel, it can be taken off the system, or you can decide actually you want to minimize my data risk here and I want to just keep it on Validate Me for now and only take it down as needed. So I'll stop sharing the screen for now, but I might just bring back some of our closing remarks. So I suppose onboarding while optimizing for compliance. So Michelle, I guess given what I've just shown there and some of what we talked through, I think it's fair that you can achieve a good onboarding experience while still optimizing for compliance.
Absolutely. I mean, goes without saying, the use of technology gives you predefined workflows. It means that any all staff are singing off the same hymn sheet, that any regulatory change is captured almost immediately. Particularly in a globalized company, there's a lot of firms out there that have maybe many offices within Ireland, or many geolocations that they need to capture. So technology allows you to do that. But a nice piece or a byproduct of it is the audit trail. You can prove what you did, when you did it, how you did it, and why you did it to some extent. And that just brings you to audit readiness and inspection readiness, if needs be. So there's lots of, I guess, byproducts of having a very swift and frictionless onboarding system for the compliance team in your business.
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. So I suppose I'm conscious of time, and we're nearly up on time. So I suppose just thanks for everyone for listening to myself and Michelle. Hopefully it was informative, and I might pass back to Paul now. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Kieran, and thanks, Michelle. So we had the poll at the start. We might just rerun it. There was a slight tech issue, so if you have submitted an answer, if you wouldn't mind submitting it again, it should be popping up on screen now. Whilst that poll is there, we might just run into the question and answers. So the first one is, Kieran, I might direct this to you. How do you ensure that an individual keeps their info up to date on the system?
Yeah, sure. I suppose we do it. We do it in a few ways. So I can talk a little bit about Validate Me. I guess, like, first and foremost, I suppose there is a mindset shift in terms of people feeling like they need to keep their own digital identity kind of secure, and taking ownership of that. And I think certainly with kind of future generations, there's not going to be as much of an appetite, I think, to share documents such as visas, passports, etc., over email. So I think that mindset shift is coming into the industry anyway. But I guess specifically, like, Validate Me acts as a reusable digital identity in a wallet. So we'll scrape any of the issue dates and the expiry dates off the documents. So we'll proactively prompt a user, when their driver's license is going out of date, when their passport is going out of date. And we tend to do that before, I guess, any of the regulated businesses that they've shared their documents with would typically come looking for it. So we do have an algorithm that tries to preempt that. I guess in terms of utility bills and proof of address documents, we similarly do the same thing. We'll scrape or ask them to key in when the document was issued, or does it have an expiry date, and use that as the basis, I suppose, to prompt. Like with everything, I guess the more you use a platform, and as I said, 1 in 3 connections on Validate Me is through a director or UBO. So their documents are naturally staying more up to date, because they're getting several requests a year. And we've a module that's in development at the moment around kind of address verification, kind of bringing that into the 21st century a little bit. But ultimately, given that the data subject now has control over their digital identity, we're finding that documents aren't tending to go stale, and that it alleviates a big burden for the entity that's onboarding them.
Super, thank you. The next question, this is possibly Michelle, you could answer this. So the question is, I've been trying to change the perception of compliance in our firm to get people on board, but it has been difficult. Any advice as to how to improve it?
That's always a challenge. Tone from the top is usually where a good compliance culture comes from. So it starts with the senior execs. Compliance can be seen as a burden. It can be seen as a tick box needs to get done sort of exercise. This sort of fire and brimstone approach about, are we going to be fined? Are we going to lose business as such? That does motivate some people to improve the compliance culture. But I think, training, kind of socializing, compliance concepts, socializing, concerns of your customers about data, kind of roundtable events with staff, in a kind of very informal setting often help. It's something I do with our team here. We sit down and we kind of have a list of topics that we need to talk about, and it's done in quite an informal way, that we trade and share ideas. So it can be a challenge, and I do feel for you, it is something that can take a lot of work to change, but certainly I think socializing it, training, roundtables, good messaging about compliance and regulatory compliance is important.
Thanks, Michelle.
I might come in there. Sorry, I'm a devil for doing that, but I also think, we're inherently just people, right? We focus a little bit on the short term, and sometimes kind of short term solutions, be it compliance or otherwise, is the route of choice, and I think even just articulating the ROI and trying to change the perception of compliance, and that it ultimately in the medium and the long term does save us money, does save us time, and does benefit our organization. I think that's a conversation worth having.
One more question then, Kieran. Are you integrated with any proposal software such as Ignition or MS Dynamics? Can we simply send a link to a client to validate me as part of our automated thank you for accepting our proposal process?
So we do have an integration with Dynamics, but not with the other mentioned software. But I guess integrations is something that we're focusing more and more on now, because we know that obviously onboarding is it's an end-to-end, and I guess what we do, and our offering is expanding, but there's always CRM systems that we're going to have to integrate with. There's always I suppose proposal systems that we're going to have to integrate with. So we're very open to integrating, and I suppose to answer your other question, like if you kick off a process and there's an integration with Validate Me, that can be configured to auto send a link out to invite that customer to Validate Me, provided you've configured the application, which naturally we'd work with you on.
Super. Thanks, Kieran and Michelle. That was great, and thank you to everyone for submitting a question. Hopefully we were able to give you some insight as to how you can improve your onboarding process. I'd like to thank Chartered Accountants Ireland for their help and support around today's webinar, and to everyone for attending. We really do appreciate you taking time every day to join in. If you would like some more information from Chartered Accountants Ireland, they have a very active LinkedIn page and website with lots of great information. You can also find Validate Me on LinkedIn, and our website is validateme.com. As I mentioned, we are making our white paper available, and CAI will be sending this out. There's a link in the chat I can see. If anyone would like to reach out to us, our details were on screen. Kieran, you might be able to pop them back up there if they're available. And as you said, yeah, look, if anyone has any other questions or issues or advice, or looking for advice in relation to onboarding, we'll be able to help out. So that concludes the webinar. So there, our details are on screen now. Please don't hesitate to reach out, and thank you very much for attending, and we hope to see you again in the near future.